Welcome to this video about aggregation functions for queries in Microsoft Access. So let's start by an example of what is an aggregation function. To do that, I'm going to pull up an Excel spreadsheet. See, I have just simply listed here 5 people's names, their made-up hypothetical salary, and the state they're in. So this data is aggregated currently at one level, at the name level. You see, each name is only listed one time, and you have the other information. I could aggregate this level data at the state level. For example, I could say, hey, I want to list Arizona, Indiana, and Utah. Now notice if I do this, I'm reducing the amount of data from 5 rows to 3 rows. So by aggregating, I have to decide what am I going to do to aggregate salary. Some options are I could average, I could take the minimum, I could take the maximum, I could do the standard deviation. I'm going to have to do something to this field to change the level of aggregation. So let me just average. You know how to do this in Excel. I'll just average Arizona, average Indiana, and average Utah. So the key here is that aggregation can cause the number of rows to change. I could aggregate one more, just the salary level, and say, you know what, I want to aggregate it overall here, and I want the median of all the salaries. And so there my aggregation, this is very high level aggregation, is just a single cell when I'm finished. So notice the difference. I'm changing the data from whatever level it's aggregated at to a different one. So now, how do we do this in Access? Well, let me show an example question, and then we'll go in and do it. So here, I want to create a list that shows how many orders each customer has placed. Now, stop for a second. What is this asking for? It's saying how many orders, a count of the orders each customer has placed. Sort the data so that customer with the most orders placed is listed first, and then display these fields, customer first name, customer last name, and a count of orders, labeled count orders. All right, jump into Access. I'm going to create my query in design view. Now I need orders and customers. So I'm going to go in and put orders, and then I'll also put customers. All right, the query wanted first name and last name, so I'll pop those in. And now somehow I need to get the number of orders. So if I put in order number and I run this, you're going to see I get Larry Blackhurst has made this one order. Jessica Burbs has made a whole bunch of orders. So I could count that 1, 2, 3, etc. and come up with an answer, but I'd like Access to do that for me. So how do I get it to do that? Well, up here in the ribbon under the Design tab is this totals function. And you saw this before when we did crosstabs, but now let's talk a little bit more in depth. What totals does is it adds this new line down here in the query called total. And this has several different options. Group by, sum, average, min, max, etc., etc. So now what this does is tells Access, hey, I want to aggregate this data at some level. I need to change it so I'm not just displaying all records. Now, the group by says, what do you want to aggregate by? So in this case, I'm going to aggregate by first name and last name. Both are listed as group bys. So that means each time the first and last name combination is unique, I am going to jam those together and simplify. So remembering back here, I'm grouping by state. And here I'm not grouping by anything. I just want everything put in together. Now the third one, order number, I don't want to group by this because if I did, I'll run this real quick, I get the same 548 options because each first name, last name, and order number is unique. So instead here I'm going to say, hey, you know what? The problem wanted me to know how many, so I'm going to count that. Now notice before I had 548, when I run it now, I only have 94 records, and I have a count of how many times Addison Black showed up in that data. All right? In other words, I counted the number of orders of each customer first and last name. Now let's clean this up a little bit. It wanted this to be labeled count orders. And it also wanted it so that most are listed first. I always have to guess with ascending, descending. I got it right this time. So there we have it. Sean made the most orders, Sean and Odette. They had the most, and it's sorted all the way down to the least. So the key here is to add totals and then to decide what you're going to total by. Let me just think about this for a second. If I had multiple people with the same first name, all right, so I have 94 now, and I actually don't know if I do in the data, so we're going to play a little game here. If I delete last name, how many rows should I have? More or less than 94? Well, I should have less if there's duplicate first names. Let's run it. And every first name is unique, so it's not going to work here. But you get the idea that if I have the same one, it's only grouping by one thing now rather than two. All right, let's jump back and do another example. This one is related to the first one. It says, create a list that displays the total dollar amount each customer has ordered with the highest values appearing first. Display in the final query these fields in this order: customer name, last name, and total dollar amount ordered at, or labeled, I should say, labeled as total amount. Okay, so now before I did a count of the orders, so I don't need that field. I do want first name and last name, and I want to group by, but how am I going to get the dollar amount? Well, there's no amounts here. The amounts are going to be listed in the order detail table. So if I add that to my view, you can see I have the price and the quantity for each. So I'm going to need to multiply these together. So let's go ahead and go into Builder. And what I'm going to do is say total amount ordered. And I want to take from the order detail table the price times the quantity. Now again, I got to delete that little expression it added in. All right. So that gives me price times quantity for each row. Now if you think about that for a second, I don't want just this. I need to somehow aggregate it. So there's two ways I can do this. I can come in here and say, you know what? I want to sum that up. So first thing it's going to do is create a master table of every first name, last name, orders, order detail. It's going to calculate price times quantity on each row, and then it's going to sum all those up. So that when I run it, oh, and I need to sort it as well. We can see that Harry Point has spent the most, ordered the most from us in terms of sales revenue. All right. Now I said there's two ways to do this. Another way, if you think about this in Excel, we might say, hey, I want to sum all of these up. All right. This will work if I put the sum, the aggregating function in here. If I come back to my total and I say, hey, now I want you to use the expression, meaning I want you to do what's up here. If I run this, I'll get the exact same answer. Now, you have to be careful because sometimes you'll put sum up here, and then if you put sum down here, it's not going to say, hey, you can't aggregate a function in an expression. So I've got that sum listed twice, and that doesn't work. So make sure that you only put it either expression and list the aggregating function up here, or else delete it up here and put sum down there. All right, so that answered query number 2. Let's go to the third query. Create a list that displays the various prices for which each inventory item has been sold. Display in the final query these fields in this order: inventory number, price each, cost per unit, and MSRP. All right, so let's go back to Access and create a new query in design mode. All right, what tables do I need? Well, I know for sure I need that inventory table, because in that inventory table, I need to have the inventory number, I need the cost per unit, and then the MSRP. All right, when I run that, I get a list of inventory number, cost per unit, MSRP for each one. Now, what I need to also display is the actual price per each unit. Okay, if we go back to that query, it said inventory number, price, and then these. So where am I going to get price? Well, to get price, I'm going to have to go to this order detail table. The price that was charged for each unit is in that table. So now if I put that in there, if I run this, you can see here I'm going to get every single transaction that I had. There's 1,100 of them. All right, every inventory item I charge this price this time, etc., etc., etc. All right, that's not too useful. I wanted to see the various prices, the unique prices that were displayed, not all the prices. So to do that, if I go to totals, I can put group by. And what that's going to do is now give me every unique inventory number, price, cost, and MSRP. All right, I don't want sum, I don't want anything like that. I just want to see the unique ones. So now if I run this, instead of having 1,100, I can see 127 prices. For inventory item number 1, I can see, hey, I actually, the same cost, the same MSRP all the time, but I've charged several different prices. One time I charged $276, another time $839. Now if I looked at this, I might say, hey, wait a second, I need to go in and look at that $276. That really looks funny. I probably shouldn't have charged something like that. Same down here. With inventory number 4, I charged way under my cost for that. So again, what the group by did is categorize them all together. In essence, you can think group by creates a concatenated primary key where everything on the group by is going to find those that are unique. All right, so what did we do in this lesson? We talked about aggregation. This is a very big deal in Access. You're going to do a lot of practice problems, and this is going to come up a lot. And you just have to slowly think through, what am I totaling by? What do I want to do in the totals? Do I want to sum, average, etc.? Or do I want to use an expression and then aggregate up there? But if you go back to this simple Excel example, all you're doing is saying, how do I want to combine data? Do I want to combine it into just a single field, or do I want to combine it into other categories? So that's all I've got on aggregation. Good luck on the practice problems and on your homework.